Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. It is time for you to join me on Perspective. And as always, we have the most interesting guests with the most interesting topics. So today, we have Naazneen Laher. She is an author and educator and also a school counselor. She's here to talk about her book, which will be launched, or rather, I think, has been launched a little while ago. And the book deals with ADHD. So we're going to unpack why the book was written, what are the type of messages that will come out through this book, who should be reading it, and does she believe that this book will give parents the answers if their children are suffering with ADHD. This is a subject we've talked about over and over and over again. And I think as time goes by, I kind of wonder, will there at some point in time be a silver bullet, a wonder drug to address this situation for once and for all? And the all-important question is, when a child is born with ADHD, and I presume that is the order it goes in, the child is born with the condition. Once the parents pick up the condition and starts treating it, does it mean that the child overcomes the condition, or do you live with it for the rest of your life, however, in a very well-managed situation? So all of that and much, much more coming up on the show with my lovely guest, Naazneen Laher, talking about her book, as I've indicated, has just been launched. And here it is, ADHD Management by Naazneen Laher. Beautifully illustrated cover, and undoubtedly the contents are very important indeed. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you on the show. And of course, you are a mother of a child with ADHD.
Yes.
So what is the correct terminology? Is it, do we say child suffering from ADHD or a child with the condition ADHD? You kind of find if you use the wrong terminology, you end up offending people. Mm-hmm. How do you feel, being addressed, and how would you like to be addressed?
I think a child or a person with ADHD, I don't see it as suffering. I see it as something, as a gift that once you have managed, once you have tackled, it's actually a superpower that you can have and use to get through life.
Alhamdulillah. People who are not as au fait, as prepared, you're probably one of those people who did years and years of research on the subject, mm-hmm. and it's brought you to a place of peace and mm-hmm. acceptance with your situation, with mm-hmm. your son, and undoubtedly following all of the rules in terms of diet, lifestyle in general, support that he needs to have. So you're in a very, very good place, and that is why you can use the word superpower mm-hmm. or in a position of power. Mm-hmm. People who don't understand ADHD feel very helpless and very hopeless mm-hmm. in the situation. So what in fact is ADHD?
Okay, so first of all, it stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Only your psychiatrist or psychologist, educational psychologist, can diagnose it. You will get ADHD with hyperactivity or without hyperactivity. Majority of the time we see that girls have it without the hyperactivity, which is why they are so late to get diagnosed. And the majority of the boys, it's not textbook, it's not a rule, it's just the stats. Majority of the boys will have it with hyperactivity, which is why boys get diagnosed quicker, because they're all over the show in the classroom. And so that's how it leads to them getting diagnosed. So the basics of it is sustained attention. Holding sustained attention for a long amount of time is a struggle. They can do it eventually, but at the beginning it's a struggle. In order to hold sustained attention, they need to be motivated and interested. So if a child with ADHD is bored, they're not going to hold attention. we also have a problem with working memory we see in children with ADHD, whereas their short-term memory might struggle a lot. If you're giving 2 or 3 instructions at one time, they're only going to remember the first. So once you get a hang of that, and you need to understand that I need to break things down into smaller steps, it becomes a lot more easier for the child. When it comes to hyperactivity, that's where you'll see your walking around when you're not supposed to, impulsive answering, impulsive talking, tapping, knocking things on the desk. Disruptive behavior. And that is where that stigma comes in of children with ADHD are just naughty and disruptive, but it's not actually the truth.
You're an educator. You're also a mother of a child suffering from, let me not use the word suffering, a child with ADHD. How do you feel when people use the term he or she is naughty? Because I kind of feel it breaks the child down, doesn't it?
Definitely. So at first, I used to get very angry. I used to feel the need to stand up and say something. But I also now need to accept that not everyone is educated on the topic. When I went through my PGCE at WITS, we never ever did a course on ADHD. The only reason why I know these things is because I went to go learn it myself, and I have a psych background. So it's also the fact of, instead of getting angry, this is my way of trying to advocate for these children and empower people by learning, by teaching. And there's a lot of misconceptions and myths about ADHD. So when someone would label someone in a class as naughty, defiant, lazy, I always ask myself or ask the educator, but what are we doing in class? Are we keeping them busy? What did they eat for breakfast? I like to ask that. So it was a learning curve for me as well, to not react to everything and also understand where everyone's point of view is coming from.
Your journey with ADHD, you have a 6-year-old son, and I think in your situation, you picked it up pretty early in his life. Talk to us about that, and hopefully by sharing, we'll be able to make other parents aware of signs and symptoms, and I should imagine early intervention does then support not only the parents but the child as well.
Yeah, so early intervention is a very big part of my book and what I like to stand for. Getting your child assessed early in life, whether you see any signs of hyperactivity, of impulse control, of aggression in boys. Once you have that early diagnosis, you can start the holistic treatments. You can start putting things into place to teach your child how to manage themselves, how to time manage, how to organize themselves. What we see is the teenagers who are not getting diagnosed, their symptoms get worse and worse over time. Whereas if we put early intervention into place, such as play therapy, occupational therapy, a controlled diet, they learn to self-manage and they learn to put their own things into perspective and know how to deal with themselves. For example, I will get my son to pack his own school bag. So he knows Tuesday is rugby, Friday is soccer, I need this bag, I need this outfit, I need these shoes. And by teaching them independence, we're teaching them to cope on their own. What happens is with late diagnosis, we have something in psychology called comorbidities. And this is when other illnesses come up attached to the ADHD. And that is what happens when we don't treat our children. So we see a lot of teenagers who haven't been diagnosed or treated coming up with anxiety and depression because they feel like something's wrong with them and they don't know what to do about it, and they stand out from their peers, and then that manifests into other things that is going to overshadow the ADHD and delay the diagnosis even further.
Would that teenager then be very angry because they don't understand what's going on with them, and the only way they know how to act out in their situation is through anger? And I'm kind of wondering how this then goes down, and that type of a child could then become marginalized. And when you talk about comorbidities, what does pop into my head is I've heard or read some time ago about a link to substance abuse in teenagers who probably do have ADHD, has never been diagnosed, has never been treated. How serious is that, and how factual is that statement?
So to an extent, we see it. Once you understand how ADHD works, then you understand how the addictive behavior can worsen. So in our brain, a person with ADHD, they reabsorb a hormone called dopamine, which gives them the hyperactivity. And their brain doesn't use it in a way an atypical person would use it, meaning they chase dopamine. And this could be through eating sugary foods. We see a lot of boys getting addicted to video games, and then we see the substance abuse later in life because they're chasing that dopamine hit.
Okay, let's hold that there. I also want to explore aggression with teenagers or probably even younger children if they are, diagnosed with ADHD. My guest is Naazneen Lahir. We're talking about her book, which has just been recently launched. It is entitled ADHD Management, and it has the most gorgeous artwork on the cover and, of course, the back of the book as well. Please stay with us. Lots more to uncover on the show this morning. Welcome back. I'm talking with Naazneen Lahir. She is an educator, an author, a counselor, and also a mother of a 6-year-old who has ADHD. She's gone on to do loads and loads of research and subsequently has written a book on ADHD. That's the reason why she's here, to unpack ADHD to you and I. So we were talking about teenagers, substance abuse, and also high levels of anger in children with ADHD. Let's link all of that together so we get a clearer picture of this personality type.
So the anger comes from the not being treated and this feeling of confusion, of helplessness. I don't know what's wrong with me. Why am I so different? And the teenage brain, as it is in a neurotypical individual, is already so confusing and so challenging. And then you're putting in something else into the works, and that confusion is heightened. The self-identity is still confused as a teenager, and that's where we see aggression, especially in boys and girls who are not physically active, so they don't have an outlet to let all that energy go. And so we see that with aggression. And because ADHD individuals have a low temperament, they have low frustration tolerance. So they have short fuses, if you want to put it in an easy way. And if it's not taught, because what I say in my book is a parent has to be a child's frontal lobe until they develop their own. And an ADHD child's brain development is 2 to 3 years behind neurotypical peers. So even though they're expected to act a certain way, their brain literally cannot make them do that. There's another comorbidity that goes with ADHD, which is very, very common, which is called oppositional defiant disorder. And that is where we see the aggression, the fight against authority, against rules. If you give a child with ADHD a whole lot of rules, they are going to ask you why, when, how. If they understand the rule, they will follow it. If you make them understand, if you come down to their level and say, this is why we're doing this, this, and this, they will understand. And the aggression also comes in with that imbalance of hormones that they have confusing their brain. And if you throw in screen time, violent video games, unbalanced diet, that's all going to be heightened. So in my book, I talk about medication, and medication really will help with the aggression, will help with dopamine chasing with diet, everything. But however,
when we talk about Ritalin, and that's just one of the medications,
yes,
but one of the more known medications to address and to assist the child with ADHD. There has been a lot of controversy around medication, particularly Ritalin. What can you tell us about it?
So what I say is, first of all, we can't also just give our child medication and think they're fixed. There's holistic development. You need to have everything at home. You need to be making sure he's sleeping 8 to 10 hours, or that she is eating a balanced meal. And the controversy, I feel, it's because it has to do with the brain. If we look at a child with asthma or diabetes, you're not going to withhold their pump, you're not going to withhold their insulin. But because it's a hormone in the brain, there's that stigma. And I wish that eventually we can let go of that stigma. If we break down depression, anxiety, ADHD into biology, into simple terms, it's a chemical imbalance in your brain, and we're just balancing out that imbalance. We're not, a lot of people say, my child's going to be like a zombie. My child's going to be like a robot. They're not going to speak. They're not going to move. Maybe they don't have the right dosage. Maybe you didn't go to a proper professional. Medication, if you have proper intervention at home, you may not need medication. I know that a lot of doctors, if your child's doing well at school, they do not give your child medication. They would only, that the last step is medication. They're actually quite reluctant to do so. And we see that the stigma, it's there and it's loud, and judgment is there and it's loud.
And sadly, in our community, it's very prevalent, simply because there seems to be a link between, well, I think people assume correctly or incorrectly that ADHD is a mental disorder. So can you correct that? Is that a myth or is that a fact?
So it's a developmental disorder that's genetic. We see it running in families. They say that if a sibling has it, there's a 30% chance the child will have it. And in countries like the UK and America, when a child gets diagnosed, they have to screen the whole family. We're not there as yet, but we will get there. And when even the word disorder, it's a neurodevelopment disorder, meaning your child is just developing differently to others. It's not a scary thing. It's not a scary word. Yes, it's daunting. It's overwhelming, but there's nothing wrong with your child. You as a parent didn't do anything wrong to your child. And since it's genetic, that's what your child was gifted with, and that's your challenge that you are now going to definitely overcome. And that is why I really want to be an advocate for educating people about ADHD.
Parents have to be deeply vested in assisting their children in overcoming or being able to manage the condition ADHD, so that that child has as good a chance of being successful in life. Earlier on, you spoke about ADD and ADHD. Talk to us about the difference.
Okay, so ADD is a bit more outdated. So now what they'll do is they'll say your child is diagnosed with ADHD with hyperactivity or without hyperactivity, because it's an internal hyperactivity versus an external hyperactivity. So it's present no matter what. For example, girls are highly underdiagnosed because they're excellent at masking their symptoms. And maybe they're sitting in the classroom for an hour quiet, but they're thinking about that bee outside. Or they're thinking about the teacher's little hair that's sticking out. But they're sitting there, they're not disruptive.
But they're just not concentrating.
But they haven't heard a word you said.
Okay.
So they're hyperactive internally. Whereas the boy is going to be kicking the neighbor, throwing something, saying something out of context. And that is why our girls go unnoticed for so long, until we see their marks dropping, or until we see that depression and anxiety peeking through later in life. So that is why now they say that we don't use ADD anymore. It's ADHD with or without hyperactivity, because the hyperactivity is there in different ways. And the masking, I think it's just a biological thing for girls to be more wanting to please more, which is sad for sad for us, but they just become much better at hiding it than boys do.
As an educator, as a school counselor, as a mother of a boy with ADHD, with due respect to you and the ADHD community, do you believe that children with the condition should be in different classes, separate classes? All of the people that have the condition are in special classes or special schools that can cater, you know, more deeply for their needs.
So I'm glad you asked that, because I am now a specialist in inclusive education as well. And you get ADHD on different spectrums. So you get high functioning, medium functioning, and low functioning. And a myth that a lot of people have is ADHD individuals also have, they see it as a learning disability, which it's not. Individuals,
however, because of the attention deficit, and because they are not able to concentrate, would that mean, and from what I've heard and seen, is that they're not high achievers or don't achieve as highly as their counterparts in the classroom?
So that's a myth. Individuals with ADHD are highly intelligent. It's not a learning disability. They learn differently. And there's a thing...
But because they don't concentrate,
yes,
and because they can't absorb everything that's shared in the classroom, are they able to follow through and put everything they've learned into practice and on the exam paper? And on that note, then let's stop right there, and you can respond to me after the ad break. I'm talking to the lovely Naazneen Lahir. She's an educator, a counselor. She's also an author of this amazing book, and it's entitled ADHD Management. We are talking about the condition, and we'll try and unpack as much as we can throughout the course of this conversation. And I'm also going to ask her where one can get hold of the book, the cost, etc. All of that after the break. Welcome back. We're talking ADHD, particularly about the book that's been written by my guest, Naazneen Lahir, and we're also talking about the condition. But please don't forget to go out and get the book if you are a parent of a child suffering with a condition. I shouldn't be using the word suffering. I've been warned by Naazneen. It's not suffering, it's a child with the condition ADHD. Do go out, get the book, and inform yourself about how you can assist your child lead a fuller and a more complete life. Back to you, exams and intelligence.
So like I was saying, we have high functioning, low functioning, and mild functioning. And we don't look at it under an umbrella. We look at each child individually. So usually our first step, if a teacher sees an issue, is to get an assessment by an educational psychologist, who will then guide the school and the teachers as to whether or not the child is high functioning enough to be in a mainstream school, or or if they need to be in a different school. If they are high functioning enough, there's a process that we can follow within our schools to get concessions for their exam. Meaning maybe a child needs extra time. So they'll get 15 minutes per hour or something along those lines. Maybe they need to be in a separate room. And all of these are available to our students as long as they go through the correct channels, getting their assessment, doing all their documentation. There's a lot of help available in a mainstream school. And the problem that I see is that people are scared to say, my child has this, my child has ADHD, because they think we're now going to treat your child differently in a school. That's not the case. We want to help your child. If your assessment says that your child is able to be in the school, we'll make it work through these concessions. If your child is so far gone, so disruptive, then it's again an individual thing that we look at. Maybe they need to be in a smaller environment. It varies from person to person. So it all depends on that assessment, on the age, on the actual school that you are at, on the family's willingness to help. That is why collaboration is really key to this. You can't be scared to say, my child walks around and says, I have ADHD and it's my superpower. And it's, for us in our household, it's so normal. And he says, I can do this well because I have ADHD, or
he owns it.
he owns it.
So let's talk about special needs schools. Are you then saying that a child with ADHD who is at the bottom of the spectrum, very low functioning, that he or she should then be at a special needs school that will cater for his or her needs so that they can reclaim their life, their place in life?
But it won't be on a permanent basis either. Once the child learns coping strategies, their learning styles, they can go back to mainstream eventually. I don't see it as something long term, especially if we're working well together to get everything into place. For exams, I know a lot of families prefer to let their child have the medication just for exams, because it wears off by the end of the day. It's not something that's going to permanently alter your brain or your hormones.
Side effects?
So yes, there are side effects. Some people like the first one, which is low appetite.
Oh.
Yeah. With low appetite, a lot of people within the first few days or weeks will have nausea or mild headaches. But again, if you have the correct dosage, if you've gone through the right channels, those things can be mitigated. And we see the effects working from day one up until some people take 2 weeks for it to start working. Other side effects I see is sleep is better, because older individuals with ADHD struggle with sleep. Their mind's so busy at night. So we see a lot of people sleeping much better, which is a good side effect as well.
I need to ask you two very important questions regarding the responses you've just given me now. Is it wise to put a growing child, on a short course of Ritalin, number one, and do they ever outgrow the condition, or is it like any other condition? You don't outgrow ADHD, but you manage it so that you can have a full, healthy life going forward.
Okay, so I'm not a psychiatrist. So with regards to the medication, we usually follow the lead that comes from the medical professional with regards to that. It depends on each individual. When it comes to growing out of it, there's no such thing. You learn to live with it. There are recent studies that I've read saying they've seen people going through a remission, if you want to use that word, because they've treated it so well and because they've learned themselves. They're so self-aware and they're so aware of their condition that it's almost invisible as they become adults. But it is a lifelong, it's something that you will always have. But it's just more evident in childhood and adolescence because their brain is still developing. But it's also a key golden hour moment because we as parents can now teach them in that time how to grow into themselves. And hopefully they'll be okay when they're older.
Is it suggested that children with ADHD perhaps would go on to be great sports people because they have all of this energy? Is that necessarily true? That if you have ADHD, you will have lots of energy and be very competitive and make a great sports person?
So yeah, they are very competitive, very, very competitive. They like the flow of the game and the rules and the steadiness, but also it's on an individual basis. So yes, an individual with ADHD needs to be active daily in order to get that energy out, but it's not necessarily that all of them go into sport. Like I said earlier, it depends on motivation and interest. So if the individual is interested in something, they will succeed at it. So I know a lot of people with ADHD who've gone into business, who've gone into accounting because they're interested in it so they can focus on it. Whereas we might have our sportsmen who also channel all their energy into that. A lot of what I've seen is boxing, taekwondo, karate. That has been excellent for individuals with ADHD because it teaches discipline and a good way to use your energy and your strength. And so again, it's always on an individual basis. We don't just speak with an umbrella around everyone. It depends on the person, on their situation. We see a lot of creativity. So a lot of individuals with ADHD, they have a very active mind. They're very creative. So we see a lot of artists, writers, musicians coming out.
Creatives.
Very creative, yes, because their mind wanders to where a neurotypical person would not.
Wow. So
yeah.
that's where all our artists come from.
Yeah.
Let's talk about when we say ADHD, we also know that in the majority of people with ADHD, especially young children, their attention span's very short. So how do you maintain or how do you motivate them with this short attention span to go on to do bigger and better things, or to achieve in school, or to concentrate, or to be able to get through a puzzle or a game or whatever it might be?
Okay, I'm going to have a long answer for you.
Go ahead.
We have another comorbidity linked to ADHD called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD. And this means that individuals with ADHD are very sensitive to criticism and to doing something badly or getting into trouble. So with ADHD, I've noticed or I've studied that positive reinforcement is key. So we practice, for example, a token system. If you do your chores, if you make your bed, you get 5 tokens. If you help with cleaning the house, you get another 5. So we motivate them in ways that they are interested in. So if you want to buy a new toy, you're going to have to pay me 50 tokens back. Or if you want something, we do a lot of reward charts. And I have examples in the book. So positive reinforcement is very, very important to get them through something. And there's a book that I read by Dr. Barkley, and he says, for every criticism, you should give your child 3 positive things in return.
So how do you do that? Do you use the sandwich approach, something positive, and then you talk about something you're not happy with, and you end it with something positive, something nice about the child?
They just want to know you're happy with them and know that they're trying their best to get to
And does
where
that
they go.
work?
Yes, it does work.
Okay, time for another break, and then we're going to our final segment. My guest is the lovely Naazneen Leher. She's talking about her book, ADHD, and she talks from experience. We're going to talk about that experience right after the ad break. ADHD management is the topic that we're covering this morning. It's a book written by Naazneen Leher. I'm fascinated by this gorgeous cover, and we're going to ask her to tell us a little bit about it. And then, of course, lots of other issues to be unpacked in this final quarter of the show. Tell me about the cover.
So when I started designing the cover, it was really important to me to make it happy, colorful, exciting. Sort of like if you had to cut open the brain of someone with ADHD, you'll just see this jumble of color and excitement to show their creativity, to show, just to show the other side, to celebrate it more than I'm suffering, I'm in this, I'm overwhelmed. Your child is super, your child's amazing. And I try to carry that theme throughout the book. So every chapter starts with a poem that I've written to my kids about how majestic and angelic I think they are and how amazing I think they are. It also talks about some anxieties that you have as a parent. It is a very serious, heavy topic that I just want people to feel positive about, to feel empowered, that I believe education is key to everything, and if we're educating ourselves, we can tackle it. So when creating the cover, I just really wanted to show that in the best way that I could.
Not dark and gloomy.
Yes.
And not a future without any light.
Yes, I wanted the child also to look really happy and smiling, so that parents could also look at it and not feel put down the way.
Absolutely. We've talked about stigma, and I guess no matter how we approach the situation with our child with ADHD, there is going to be judgment out there. What are the type of things we need to be telling our children for them to feel affirmed, to feel real, to feel alive, and not feel marginalized by having ADHD?
I think first of all is teaching them self-love, teaching them positive affirmations. You as a parent making them feel as if there's nothing wrong with them, because all of that starts in the home, it starts within. And if they are confident in themselves, it's going to be a bit of a buffer, and telling them to expect that other people may not accept them, and that the world is the way that it is and life is that way. It just to teach them those hard life lessons. I know we want to sugarcoat everything for our kids, but we have to create resilient kids.
Absolutely.
We have to teach them that if someone says something mean to you, you can't retaliate. You have to try your best to walk away, or just deal with it in the best way that you can. So I know sometimes my kids will tell me, if they see I'm upset, they'll say, "That's life, mommy, just move on." And I like that, because that's what I tell them, that's how life goes. You just have to move on.
And I guess the key to all of this is honesty, love, and, as you say, affirmations. So, of course, there's a story behind you having written this book, ADHD Management. And that story starts with you and your journey into ADHD with the birth of your first child. How did you pick up that there was something wrong? What were the signs and symptoms, and when did you act? When did you become proactive in your situation?
So the first thing for us was the sleep. He never ever slept well and was very fussy and clingy. He suffered something called night terrors, which was because his brain was so overactive, he never got into that deep state of sleep. So sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night and just be uncontrollable crying, and we'd land up in the ER a few times. We also saw a lot of childhood toddler aggression within him, frustration, and the hyperactivity. So we were quite aware that something was brewing, and we went through a lot of different channels. We went through play therapy. We began with our pediatrician, who also mentioned, which was quite important, that he had tonsillitis and adenoids, saying when they sleep with their mouth open, their brain develop lags. So we got that sorted out. Saw a bit of the sleep terror stop then with that. But we still carried on through the channels, went to play therapy, went to an occupational therapy. I saw an amazing OT in Johannesburg, and she really guided me through the whole process. We got him assessed, got him to a psychiatrist, a pediatric psychiatrist, who then diagnosed him when he was 4.
Regarding occupational therapy,
Yes.
what role does it play in supporting the child?
So with occupational therapy, they are really going to help calm the nervous system. It's really going to help control hyperactivity, teach you skills. It's not going to be lifelong. So he did occupational therapy for 2 years, and now I know what to do at home with him, and he knows what to do. The OT will also help with gross motor and fine motor development, because, like I said earlier, their development is a little bit lagged to neurotypical individuals, so it just gets them to where they need to be. And it also would assist with daily management. So the OT actually got me this amazing, it's a sensory brush, where you brush, it's like a specific technique that you have to follow, where you brush your child every 2 to 3 hours during the day, and that really helps to regulate them and calm their nervous system down. And I really saw that that helped. And she taught us techniques about swinging and movements and carrying heavy things. And just, she really taught us a lot about how to do the daily management and get him to where he needs to be. So he's not doing OT anymore because we now know what to do for ourselves, which was great.
So all of those interventions do play a huge role in the development of the child. What would you say, and I'm sure it's contained in the book, and we do urge people to go out and get this book, very especially if your child or children have ADHD. But what are the do's and the don'ts as far as children with ADHD is concerned? In terms of diet, in terms of play, in terms of interaction, all of those things.
So what I've done with the book is I've collaborated with a dietitian and a doctor who've added their insights into the book. And it's not a one-size-fits-all, but there is general guidelines. So from my personal experience, I've noticed high protein really helps a child a lot. So every snack, every meal, we make sure we include protein. There's a few studies that suggest that added colorings, preservatives actually affect a child even more. So we try to limit sugar, we try to limit as much as we can. They are kids at the end of the day. What's really helpful is when the school is on the same page as you and they don't allow these treats at home. In their school lunch. So that really helps. What the OT said is doing heavy work. So making him lift, making him box, making him active, sport, that really helps regulate them as well, keeping them busy and limiting screen time.
Let's wrap up by talking about ADHD. Earlier on in the discussion, I talked about, do you outgrow it? You've, you've given us a perspective on that. But adults with ADHD who are still battling may or may not even know that they have the condition. What is your advice to them? I know you have little children with ADHD, but and you've done lots of research, so perhaps you can share something with us.
It's never too late. You can still get diagnosed. You can still get meds. You can still learn coping strategies. Therapy will help. There's something called cognitive behavioral therapy that a psychologist can help you through, just to help you get to fill the missing gaps that you have. I know of many adults who've been getting diagnosed in their 20s or 30s, and that diagnosis is actually liberating, because your whole life you're being told you're lazy, you're naughty, you can't do anything, you can't sit still, and then you get the diagnosis and you feel liberated, because you feel as if, whoa, there's nothing wrong with me, there's actually something I need to control. And I feel that it's never too late to start your journey, and it's never too late to get the help that you need.
Is medication at that late stage of your life, 30s, 40s, possibly even 50s, is it recommended for with people with ADHD?
Yes.
And I know you're not a medical doctor, but I say it again, I do know that you've gone through a lot of research in writing the book through, obviously, your own personal circumstances.
No, so it definitely is, and it's actually more recommended because you did not get that early intervention. So the medication at that point is going to probably be the most significant thing that you do. So it's nothing to be scared of. It's actually going to be quite helpful.
Undoubtedly, you started your journey as an advocate for ADHD. You've written a book. What's the next step of your journey and the journey of your family regarding ADHD?
I think it's just to get the word out there, to educate as many people as possible about ADHD. And the book is also for teachers, to get teachers on board and not be so scared to teach these pupils. And I think just to educate, to bring awareness and to celebrate it.
You're an educator yourself. We've just got about a minute left to wrap up time. But do you believe that our education system is on board with issues like this? Not only ADHD, but other learning difficulties as well?
Not yet, but we're getting there. There's a lot to do still. A lot of schools have implemented certain strategies, but we are getting there. I think we just need to educate more teachers about classroom management, teaching strategies, and parents to not be so scared to communicate with their school about what their child needs.
where can we get the book, and what will we be paying for the purchase of this book?
Okay, so it's 299 Rand. It's going to be on Amazon, and I do have a QR code for ordering if you want a physical copy.
Good, and that's where we leave it. Thank you so very much for educating us today on the show regarding ADHD and, of course, the launch of your book, ADHD Management by Naazneen Lahir. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you. Go well, and salamu alaikum to you.
Assalamu alaikum.
And that's where we leave it. Thank you indeed for joining us. I do hope that you've learned much through this interview with the lovely Naazneen Lahir and her book, ADHD Management. I certainly have picked up a thing or two regarding ADHD. And just a little secret, I seem to think that I'm an adult with ADHD, but hey, let me go for that diagnosis first. Till the next time, as always, Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz.